Hi, it's Sally Lockwood with you on the Sky News Daily today. Take a listen to this.
The ceasefire is over. We can already hear the bombing, and I'm at a hospital. There was a hit about 50 metres from here. This is the biggest still functioning hospital in Gaza. It's at 200% capacity. Yes, this is a hospital. The health system here is overwhelmed. This hospital simply cannot take more children with the wounds of war. There are children everywhere. These children are sleeping. There was a bomb literally 50 metres from here.
That's James Elder from the charity UNICEF. As you can hear, he's inside a hospital in Gaza very shortly after the ceasefire ended. He posted that video to social media. You can see lots of children behind him who seem to be surrounded by bags and blankets. Well, we've managed to get hold of James to learn more about what's going on and to find out what happened when the ceasefire ended.
Yeah, it became clear 30 seconds after the time elapsed. That's when you first heard explosions. Within 30 seconds, you could hear the bombardments again. You could hear the drones, the missiles in the sky. It was that quick. Within 30 minutes, I was heading to Al Nasser Hospital. Within 100 metres maximum, you could see that a missile, a drone, I don't have the military expertise, had hit a building there. We moved quickly from there because a secondary strike is often common, but the hospital was so very close. And then got to the hospital and just saw the stress and strain and anxiety that just suddenly strewn across people's faces again.
So just explain to us what that looks like, James. More casualties coming into a hospital that is already crammed with patients.
Yeah, it's a bit heartbreaking. I've been going to this hospital every day to see health workers, to listen to health workers, to hear their stories of, I'm just sitting under a table.
Why are you sitting under a table?
Because I can hear explosions outside. When you see children with the wounds of war, you see that it's multiple things. It's broken bones, it's horrendous burns, and it's shrapnel. The smallest piece of shrapnel are the most lethal. And it's not a cliche, Sally, when people say nowhere is safe in the Gaza Strip. There are no bunkers, so there is nowhere safe. Al Nasser Hospital, it's just full. Even only a few days ago, there were still children with the wounds of war who'd come from the north, but everywhere. Every piece of ground, apart from even the corridors, but you can walk through, big enough for a trolley to get through, for an emergency trolley to get through. Everywhere else is full. They've been seeking shelter some for weeks from the bombs, many just from the cold, the sanitation that's broken down here. I talked to girls who are 13, 14, whose bedrooms are somewhere probably destroyed, but they were typical girls' bedrooms, posters on the walls, books on the shelves, computer on the desk. And now with their family of 5, they're on a double mattress.
What sort of situation are some of these children in Al Nasser Hospital, James? Presumably so many of them have been separated from their parents as well.
The community here is immense in terms of absorbing separated children. Of course, there are children who've lost both parents. Little boy Omar I spoke to, his mother was killed when their family home was hit. His father was killed. His 7-year-old twin was killed. When I talk to Omar, I don't talk about those things. I can't bear to relive anything, but just a few words about his brother, how clever his brother was. But he will shut his eyes for long periods, and I'd ask his auntie why. And she just said he's so terrified that he's going to lose the image of his parents from his mind. And then he's lost them, both in his life and in his mind. He's so afraid of that. Children with amputations, little Ahmed, 3 years old, he lies there. I'm pretty good with kids. I've got kids. Mine are grown up. I've been doing this work a long time. I can play, I can juggle, I can do silly things. I can't get anything other than a blank, stared, terrified look from this little boy. And his carer, it's not his mum, his mum's dead. His carer says it's the same for her. There's just nothing. He lies there without his right leg, football next to it. He loved football. So to see him again today, to see his face, Sally, as he heard the sounds, the whistling sounds, and then the explosion was, I don't know, I'm not sure fear captures it.
It sounds absolutely harrowing and heartbreaking, what you're describing there. You've also previously called this a war on children. James, just explain that. What is it you want people to understand about what you're seeing on the ground in Gaza?
I haven't met someone who hasn't lost someone. And of course, the children you don't see, I'm still very conscious that there are children, Israeli children, somewhere here, somewhere, I imagine a tunnel somewhere, utterly terrified again as this continued. So I see the pieces of that. I see more wounds of war than I maybe have ever seen in my 20 years with UNICEF. I don't see hatred here. I see a lot of very, very terrified people, but you see around the region the polarization. So I want people to understand, I guess, that there seems to be only a few people that have the power to stop this. And the longer it goes on, well, more children will have just been killed today. More children will be, joining the 1,000 who've had amputations, Sally. But what it will do to this society, which is already on its knees, as someone said when I asked them if they're worried about things restarting, and they said, James, I've lost my wife, my son, my home, my job. All I've got left is hope. Of course, that hope has been squashed today as well.
James, you've moved down to Rafah, the crossing between Egypt and Gaza. Where is safe right now for people to try and seek shelter?
Nowhere is safe. I speak to people whose homes were bombed while they sat in their living room. Someone died, others took shelter in a school. The school was bombed. They've come south. The south is being bombed. I don't know the safe place. And for a unilateral declaration of a tiny piece of dirt to be declared safe for 2 million people is nonsensical. Today, when I was at Rafah Hospital talking to a journalist, and a bomb hit nearby, and they could see the responses, people shuddered and sort of the force. And he said, please go somewhere that's safe. I'm like looking, thinking, there's 200 children in that hospital. They are not safe. I'm not safe here. Those doctors are not safe. That's the message I think to convey. While this bombardment occurs, everyone does need to understand that no one on the Gaza Strip has a safe place to go.
Just lastly, before I let you go, James, I know your time is precious. What is it that you want the international community to hear today?
I don't know what the word is for the number of child deaths, because right now, Sally, the threats were on the ground with disease outbreak because everything's been crushed. To have hostilities again to rain down again from the air, it's a case of never again. This world seems to constantly go for this never again. Well, I guess the message is this is a final warning. We will see unprecedented deaths here if action isn't taken to stop the war.
OK, James Elder from UNICEF, thank you so much for your time today. We wish you well, stay safe and good luck with your work.
Thanks so much, Sally.
We're taking a short break now. We'll be speaking to our Middle East correspondent, Sally Bunkall, in just a sec. So, the temporary ceasefire lasted 7 days. In that time, dozens of Israeli hostages were exchanged for many more Palestinian prisoners, and much-needed aid got into Gaza. Qatar, who's been integral in brokering this truce, says talks are still ongoing in terms of trying to re-establish some sort of pause. But they also say that the bombing of Gaza today has complicated things. Let's speak to our Middle East correspondent, Sally Bunkall, who's in Sderot in southern Israel. Ali, what's it looking like now? What are the prospects of another truce?
I wouldn't be surprised if they managed to agree another truce. Israel still has, I think the exact number is 163 hostages, they estimate, still in Gaza. So they still want to get, well, all of them out, but as many out as they possibly could do during a sort of a temporary ceasefire. So I think if the opportunity does present itself and Hamas are able to give a definitive list to Israel, then I can foresee a scenario whereby there is another truce, whether that's tomorrow, 3 days' time, 5 days' time. I just don't know. But in that period, obviously, Israel is now taking advantage of the fact that it can now begin fighting again because they've got these two objectives, release the hostages, but also eliminate Hamas. In the last 7 days, how many hostages were released? And do we know if all the children were brought out? We don't think all the children were brought out. I mean, for starters, you have the two children in the Bibas family, Ariel, who's 4 years old, and Kafir, the youngest hostage being held in Gaza, who's now 10 months old. Hamas have said that they were killed in an Israeli airstrike, but they've offered no proof of that, and Hamas have made these claims before that have turned out not to be true. 50 Israeli hostages came out over the last week, but also some foreign nationals as well. We saw a lot of Thai nationals come out. A couple of Russians came out. They were dual Israeli-Russian nationals. Apparently, Hamas says a special favour to Vladimir Putin. So it was a successful period, but there is a lot more still in there, including IDF soldiers. And they, I'm sure Hamas will want to exact a far higher price for their release. Let's talk diplomacy for a second. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is back in Israel, and he said that what's happened to civilians in the north of Gaza should not be repeated in the south. Is there any sign that Israel is going to use a different approach in the south of Gaza? The opinion is divided as to how much the Israelis are listening to the Americans, but the Americans are really urging caution now, both behind the scenes but very much in public. They don't want to see a mass displacement of civilians again. They don't want to see hospitals targeted, and they're very aware of the humanitarian situation. So what the Israeli military have done is they've divided Gaza, the entirety of the strip, up into hundreds of tiny little grid squares. So I think the intent there is if they want to operate in one small grid square, which might just be 100 square metres, for example, then they would notify any residents in that small little area to evacuate for presumably a temporary period. Whether or not that works in practice, they'll deliver the messages in Arabic, but we'll have to see whether or not people adhere to them. If they do want to go into the south, we'll have to see how their strategy changes, particularly with regards to civilians there. And I think it has to change because they can't afford to lose the support of America.
Yeah, and in light of that, Ali, you know, America is their greatest ally. Antony Blinken has made a couple of warnings in terms of Israel's actions in Gaza in his latest visit. Do you think we're seeing a shift in the American messaging when it comes to Israel?
I still think that the US stands behind Israel and its desire to defeat Hamas. I don't think that has changed, but I think the Americans are concerned about the way the first phase of the war, the bombing campaign and then the ground invasion of the north, I think they do have concerns about how that was carried out. But also, you know, to put it bluntly, that Biden has a lot of domestic pressure on him as well. There's a lot of America that does not like the way the Israelis are prosecuting this war. There are people, staffers in the White House, who have been openly critical of it. We're in the run-up to presidential elections at the back end of next year, so he has that to think about as well.
Has there been any response from Hamas yet, Ali, since this ceasefire ended?
The message we've had from Hamas and their allies, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or at least their Gazan allies, Islamic Jihad, is the rockets that have been coming out into Israel, and it's been a lot today. It's a rocket barrage, lots of interceptions just over where we are now. That is Hamas's message, that they are not gone. They are still there and they're going to fight. In
terms of what happens next for Gaza, is there any sense of clarity yet about what that could look like? What will be left of Gaza once this war is over?
It really doesn't feel at the moment as though the Israeli government is prepared to discuss the day after scenario, as it's called. Now, whether or not they're doing more in private, possibly, but as much of the world starts to talk about a two-state solution in stronger terms, the Israelis are not there yet. They are in the middle of their war. Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't want to see the Palestinian Authority, for example, take control of Gaza the day after Israeli troops leave. But I'd have to say, I don't think the Palestinian Authority want to do that either, because they would be seen as being Israel's puppets. And so it's incredibly complex. You know, this is riddled with real confusion and wrought with difficulties as to who goes in to govern Gaza next.
Yeah, it certainly is, Ali. But thanks so much for walking us through all of that. Take care, and we'll chat to you again soon.
Thanks, Sally.
That's it for today. Thanks very much for your company. The Sky News Daily is back again on Monday.